Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News. I am your disheveled goblin host Daniel Green, and today, yes, this is a new backdrop behind me. It's phase 2 of a 4-phase plan I believe we have here to get my bookshelves in their final presentation setting for you all here in my new office. So do not grow too attached to book wall that has evolved from book corner, as it will probably be the shortest of any of the phases you experience with me here. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into the first story of the day, which is going to be the monumentally exciting news that we are getting a new sci-fi trilogy from author duo James S.A. Corey, the first book of which will be released August 6th of 2024 and is titled The Mercy of Gods, being published by Orbit, and it was released with a plot summary that reads, "How humanity came to the planet called Anjin is lost in the fog of history, but that history is about to end. The Karinks, part empire, part hive, have waged wars of conquest for centuries, destroying or enslaving species across the galaxy. Now they are facing a great and deathless enemy. The key to their survival may rest with the humans of Anjin. Caught up in academic intrigue and affairs of the heart, David Alcor is pleased just to be an assistant to a brilliant scientist and his celebrated research team. Then the Karinks ships descend, decimating the human population and taking the best and brightest of Anjin society away to serve on the Karinks' homeworld, and David is swept along with them. They are dropped in the middle of a struggle they barely understand, set in a competition against the other captive species, with extinction as the price of failure. Only David and a handful of his companions see past the Darwinian contest to the deeper game that they must play to survive, learning to understand and manipulate the Karinks themselves. With a noble but suicidal human rebellion on one hand, and strange and murderous enemies on the other, the team pays a terrible price to become the trusted servants of their new rulers. David Alcor is a simple man swept up in events that are beyond his control and more vast than his imagination. He will become the champion of humanity and its betrayer, the most hated man in history and the guardian of his people. This is where his story begins. And God damn, that sounds like a hell of a pitch from James S.A. Corey. And of course, I am thrilled to be getting this. I'm feeling a bit sad that The Expanse is forever in the rearview mirror. It was a truly special series to experience as it came out, one of the more memorable ones of my lifetime. But seeing that James S.A. Corey is still going to be working together and putting out a whole new trilogy is a heck of a way to be able to be okay moving on. Let me know what you think of this concept in the pitch down below, a kind of like Darwinian species-wide Hunger Games at the bidding of alien overlords who are fighting their own war, if I took all that right, is interesting. I'm in, especially with this writing talent behind it. My only critique so far would be The Mercy of Gods. Well, I think in the context of the story that is being pitched is a good enough title. It sounds a bit generic and isn't up there with Leviathan Wakes for me in terms of like a first book in a series kicking off momentum. And the cover itself I thought was good. Not my favorite style personally, but if you like that style, probably great. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments down below. And yeah, we get more James S.A. Corey. But let's go ahead and move on into the next story of the day, because we have seen some whoopsies coming through from the publisher behind Fourth Wing. Whoopsie daisy! Because the sequel to Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, is officially hitting shelves, and we've seen some fans taking to TikTok to showcase that they have received misprinted copies, seemingly more so than is typical. I do want to point out this could just be an example of a book that was mass released, and as that always happens with, we even saw some misprints in the recent Sanderson Secret projects, people are finding some misprints and are now being encouraged to show them because they're seeing it kind of take off on TikTok. But with this also kind of being a really rapid release for a sequel, I think it was only 7 months from Fourth Wing's release to Iron Flame Flames release, there also could be some quality control issues here as well. I don't know for sure. It is just kind of funny though to hear that there are upside down pages, typos, which is to be expected, misprinted spines that say Fourth Wing, not Iron Flame, as well as bleeding spraying edges. This could be seen as a bad thing by the fans, but I would encourage you to keep hold of your misprinted copies. Not only are they a kind of, oh, that's neat thing to have, but maybe one day they'll be kind of valuable? Not sure. If this does bother you though, the publisher has put out a statement saying they are going to make sure people who have bought copies with misprints in them will be able to exchange them for corrected versions. So yes, this is a whoopsie, but not seeming to be egregious on a level that some outlets are making it out to be, and it's absolutely not heard of for a mass release book to have some copies that are found to have some issues. It just happens. My personal gut instinct is telling me there's probably a few more misprints than is typical for this big a release, but with Fourth Wing being a series that is so memed on, and the trend of showcasing the misprinted issues appearing in a small wave on TikTok, that's all that's really happening here. It's not anything that's going to be monumental or a mass recall of the book. Next up, we have seen that Spotify has officially released its 200,000 plus audiobook library to its US premium tier subscribers. This has previously been available in other countries before, but stepping into Audible's space, Spotify is trying to get into the audiobook game. If you are subscribed to Spotify, you don't need to do anything in addition to get access to these books. You will just start seeing audiobooks in the Spotify search results that are marked to be available to you at the premium tier. But this is not on a credit system that is similar to Audible, and is instead on a system that on premise, I really do not like. At the premium tier level, you get 15 hours of audiobook listening per month before you will hit your limit. If you hit that limit, you can then top up by purchasing an additional 10 hours of listening time.
That's not enough.
First of all, I don't know one person in my life who listens to audiobooks who just listens to 15 hours a month. If you have even just a 45-minute commute every day to and from work, you are getting through that far faster than a month. Duh. And if I was like in the middle of a really good part of a book and suddenly it was like, oh, you need to spend money to get 10 more hours, I would just be pissed and frustrated every single time it happened. They also then said that this 15-hour limit should be enough to get through 2 audiobooks per month. I get that the sci-fi fantasy space is known for big chunkum books, but What are people listening to novellas? What are you talking about? I'm willing to admit maybe my numbers are just crazy skewed because I am deep within the super book nerd space. Maybe that is ample amount of hours and true average time for audiobooks. I don't read a whole lot outside the space I'm in, so I'm willing to admit that could just be me being, I don't know, disconnected from the modern non-fantastical Joe. It's just, in my opinion, the audiobook space is such a difficult area to actually get someone to change who they are subscribed to for their audiobooks. I will be really curious to see how successful Spotify is in getting consumers to change their habits in how they consume their audiobooks, because it's one of the big factors in software development, app development. If you're going to change something, you need to make it very convenient and easy people to lift up and go over there. An example of this is like if you're trying to move from using Chrome to Firefox. Firefox has all these import tools to take your saved passwords on Chrome and put them on over to Firefox to make that transition as smooth as possible. Spotify can't really do that. They can't just say, oh, you've listened to all these audiobooks on Audible, and so we'll already know your recommendations. We'll have those same books immediately available for you. And while you certainly don't own the audiobooks you spend credits for on Audible, even that small bit of ownership you do get seems to be just completely gone with Spotify. You are straight up just streaming as you would a song, an audiobook. And if you're someone who really takes pride in their massive collection on Libro FM or Audible, I could see that being another hurdle. There are additional benefits to Spotify, like I'm sure at the end of the year it's going to be included in like your music wrap up that so many people love and is genuinely a cool thing that Spotify does. It just seems like the audiobook space has such a need for shakeup, for something to change, yet it's really difficult to do. If there's a company big enough to do it though, Spotify seems to be one of them. Are you going to change over to Spotify Spotify? No? Are you super dedicated to Libro FM or something? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, before we get into the deluge of trailers that dropped over the weekend, a quick word from today's sponsor, Wraithmarked Creative. And that is because they, along with fantasy powerhouse duo David Estes and Dirk Ashton, have come together to bring you Kraken Rider Z. Many of you might already know David and Dirk as the authors of Fate Marked and the Paternus trilogy. This time they're bringing a series perfect for fans of Iron Prince and magic, with the full stamp of approval from Bryce O'Connor. Kraken Rider Z is an action-packed fantasy with loads of comedy and lots of heart that takes the classic Dragon Rider tale and turns it completely on its head. The story is about the lowly hull scrubber Z Taro and his incredible secret, as their slogan goes, if there's one thing a dragon fears, it's a Kraken. More than a dozen fantasy authors and blogs have voted Kraken Rider Z a perfect score, including Cameron Johnson and the Nerd Book Review. Not to mention the audiobook is narrated by none other than the great Tim Gerard Reynolds. So if you want to pick up your next epic read, be sure to head on over to the link below and pre-order your copy today. Back to the news! Stepping on into all of that trailer goody news and trying not to sound like a Netflix shill, because I believe all of it is coming from them, we're of course going to be kicking it off with the biggest trailer reveal of the weekend, and that is going to be for Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender live action adaptation. And I'm sorry, important correction, apparently this is not a trailer, it's a teaser, despite being 2 minutes long. I guess Netflix is really into edging y'all. This has been met with what seems to be mostly positive responses. It is currently still sitting at number 38 on trending, and even I myself, when I live reacted to it on Twitch, thought it looked pretty darn good. Everything from the costuming to casting and even backdrops all seemed solid enough, especially for it being a teaser that usually we see visual elements from improved upon by the time a show is actually released. My overall thoughts largely reflect Hello Future Me's comment, which I believe is still #1 on the video right now, and it is that the redemption arc hopefully begins. Hopefully being the key word there, because trailers, and by proxy teasers, are lies, right? We have to keep that in mind. Sometimes they put shots in there that aren't even in the final product. For me, what I'm most excited to see is the realization of Zuko. Yes, this is Aang's story, no question, but in terms of the soul of what makes Avatar: The Last Airbender really special to me, and I feel like a lot of fans, it is the redemption arc of this antagonist. And I really hope we get to see that emotional journey not put on the back burner in any way, shape, or form, because, well, yes, I reiterate, Aang is the main character. Zuko, in so many ways, and what he goes through is the soul of Avatar to me. The next biggest trailer to drop for Netflix, though, was their Rebel Moon, which is not an adaptation, of course, is its own original thing from Zack Snyder. And I actually like that this trailer pat down my expectations a little bit. I didn't think this looked bad. It just very clearly showcased that this is going to be Zack Snyder's Star Wars, and you should expect that. Excessive use of slow-mo, even in this trailer, included. So this trailer did exactly what it should. I'm a little bit less excited, but I feel like more properly prepped for what I'm going to receive. Now, just getting 3 quickie trailers out of the way, we also got a trailer for Witcher: Sirens of the Deep. The only really important takeaways here, though, for me, are that, yes, the actual original voice of Geralt of Rivia from the video games is coming in to voice the Witcher in this animation. Fantastic. I'm really curious to see where this franchise is going to end up after Henry Cavill leaving the live action show just stripped all of the wind out of the sails. And then there was that other live action adaptation that I don't feel like was forgotten. It was just delivered and unopened.
What happened here?
But I hope for the Witcher fans we're able to see some form of momentum built back here. We also had a Yu Hakusho live action trailer drop that looked super duper action packed. I don't know too much about this franchise, aside from the fact that I used to have a VHS when I was a kid of, I believe, just the first 2 episodes, which I'd repeatedly watch, but never went beyond there. So I remember that a guy is hit by a car and sent into the spirit realm, and the reason he was hit by a car is he was saving a kid, but it turned out he didn't actually need to save the kid because the kid wouldn't have been killed by the car, and that was like a haha moment. That's genuinely all I remember. And I think there was a tournament. Yes? And then the last trailer I don't want to go too deep on would be Dead Boy Detectives, which is actually taking place within the Sandman universe. No, this is not a continuation of the interpretation of these characters we saw in season 3 of Doom Patrol, but is instead Netflix just kind of broadening the Sandiverse, Anakin's least favorite universe, on their platform after the success of the Sandman show. Despite this being a show that was originally ordered by HBO before being moved to Netflix. For those of you unaware what the story is about, the Dead Boy Detectives follows two ghosts of dead children, Charles Roland and Edward Payne, who, rather than enter the afterlife, stay on Earth to become detectives investigating supernatural crimes. And then the final trailer we're going to be talking about here is for Netflix's Three Body Problem, which isn't even actually a trailer, it was more of a clip. And I feel like there's even more baggage in that because clips from shows put on YouTube, it's a bold move, right? It fully shows, hey, here's the tone we're going for. Here's what the show is going to feel like in a full scene. And this one for Three Body Problem really felt like a miss for me. It didn't feel what my expectations were even in the ballpark of for a Three Body Problem adaptation. Believe what they're trying to do here is actually like shoot for a more broad appeal tone for this clip they put out there to hopefully get a wider audience than what your typical clip for like a high concept sci-fi story would typically garner. But every time you do that, you risk alienating the core audience of that story. And a lot of the Three Body Problem fans I know have seen this clip and gone like, that doesn't really feel right. It's not a death sentence by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a clip that could be in context with a wider show actually great. But for me, it just was like a, whoa.
What the was that?
And then the final piece of Netflix news we're going to be getting here today is Arcane Season 2 is officially coming of November 2024. And we got this little fun teaser, which it's amazing how much a lot of these previous trailers gave me for various like levels of return for me getting excited. And all Arcane, because of how good season 1 had to do, was drop this. And I am immediately frothing with. And then in a quick story I want to cover, just because it's something that has been a sponsor here, but I do genuinely just think is really cool news for the space. Similar to how Spotify is stepping into Audible space, Campfire, continued, again, sponsor, full disclosure here on the channel, is pushing more and more into the publishing space as well, with insanely higher royalties for the authors that have been brought onto their platform. It's really cool, in my opinion, how they're approaching the reading experience, where as you continue through the plot of a story, an author can lay out like additional bonus material for reading about like lore elements within their story. It's just really neat. So if you want to check out someone else who is actually trying to support smaller authors who aren't able to get those fat paychecks by giving them far higher percentages, I really recommend you check out Campfire, linked in the description down below. Could be your new reading and writing app. Not a sponsor right now. It's just something where, like, from an outside perspective, person interested in the business side of publishing, is really neat what they're doing over there. But after all of that non-book news, I want to end fantasy news pulling back into the book space, and so I'm happy to cover, after a whole lot of people asked for it, the new Critical Role book, because we have had the cover and release date announced for Bell's Hells, What Doesn't Break by Cassandra Caw, with art by Matt Hubel. This will be hitting shelves July of 2024 and is being released by Penguin Random House, with a pitch saying, What Doesn't Break from author Cassandra Caw will explore Laudna's solo years on the road to Drusar before Bell's Hells. And as someone who has never really watched much of Critical Role, I'm sure I pronounced everything there perfectly.
You nailed it!
And for today's self-pub indie promo book from a member of the Goblin Horde, we have Mostly Human, Book 1 in the Four Pollock series by Lon Barnador. Pitched as a science fiction noir story, Mars, the small red rock that started with the dreams of astronomers and sci-fi writers. It became a place for broken dreams, the desire peddlers, criminals, and those who were labeled as criminals. For Pollock is a clone detective on Mars who just lost his partner when an old flame shows up. This femme fatale drags For into a dangerous game of deceit, mayhem, and murder. Available in the links below. But this has just been your latest episode of Fantasy News. Like and subscribe if you have not already, and hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. I got books, I got merch coming down the road soon, and have a good one, y'all. Peace.